Last time in the world of Qualth, the seal to the demon realm, Tartarus, had been broken, and the city of Thoradrin was laid to waste. The dragons, led by the great worms that lead dragonkind, were preparing to depart, readying themselves to combat the demonic invaders. Finally, the demons departed from Thoradrin and arrived at the city surrounded by cherry trees, the elven capital of Kirsch. The demons surrounded the city and began a brutal siege against the elves. As the towering demon slammed its blade against the Hikaskald barrier of Kirsch, the ethereal shield cracked, a spiderweb of energy spreading across its luminescence. The city, nestled on the northern continent of Norden, trembled under the demon's wrath. As the shield cracked, an opening was formed, splitting from the ground to halfway up the Hikaskald, and the lesser demons that had been awaiting this moment stormed in through the crack. The elven defenders on the walls of Kirsch launched their arrows and magic at the incoming horde, halting the demons' advance as they poured everything they had into destroying the invaders. However, this delay was fated to be short-lived. The massive demon, as tall as Kirsch's highest tower, struck again, its blade shattering the Hekaskild into fragments of fading light. With the barrier broken, demonic forces surged through, their screams piercing the night. The elven defenders on the walls loosed arrows and spells, doing everything they could just to slow the horrible fiends down. But as the massive demon struck once more, chaos enveloped the city. It brought its massive blade down upon the wall, taking out a large swath of the fortification, as well as the elves that stood atop the rampart behind the stone battlements in defense of their beloved city. With such a huge gap in the city's defenses, the demons marched in endlessly. Inside the royal chambers, Prince Harry, a tall and skinny high elf man with semi-long messy black hair and a big bushy black beard, burst through the doors. His parents, King Gunther, a tall middle-aged high elf man with a scholarly appearance having long straight black hair and a long slender face with a goatee and wearing round spectacles, and Queen Aurelia, a tall high elf woman with long straight silver hair and a beautiful face with patches of silver dragon scales on her face and arms, were jolted awake by his desperate cries. "Father, Mother, the Hekaskald has fallen. Demons swarm through Kirsch." The king and queen peered out the window, their eyes widening in shock as they witnessed columns of smoke rising from the city below. In moments, the royal couple was dressed, the urgency palpable. Queen Aurelia's voice was steady. "I'll send word to Organon, my half-brother, for aid." Hearing this, Gunther nodded. "Then I will take Harry along with the on-duty royal knights to assess the dreadfulness of our situation." His voice trailing off as he looked up in solemn and silent contemplation for a moment, before turning to Harry and grimly stating, "Come, let us gather the royal knights and head down to see what grim sight awaits us." But just as he said that, Harry hastily replied, "The royal knights are gathered. I called for them to prepare as I ran here. They are in the royal hall awaiting your orders, father." The king looked at his son in surprise for but a moment, before extolling loudly, "Good lad, let us make haste then." And at that, Gunther ran out the chambers with Harry closely following him. They gathered the knights, with the king simply commanding, "Follow closely and steel your hearts," before continuing down to the ground level of the royal palace. King Gunther, with Harry and the royal knights at his side, rushed to the palace's outer steps. The sight that greeted them was apocalyptic. The city they loved was engulfed in flames, the air rent with the cacophony of battle and terror. Gunther fell to his knees, overcome by despair. "Father!" Harry yelled, grabbing his arm. "We must act." Gunther looked up at his son, his resolve returning. He rose, taking in the destruction once more, his expression turning steely. At that moment, two huge demons charged at them. Without hesitation, Gunther summoned his magical silver rod, adorned with silver dragon wings at the top, and pointed at the beasts. "Mutatio!" he intoned, speaking the incantation for a spell. A green beam shot from his finger, splitting into two mid-flight and striking the demons. They contorted grotesquely before collapsing into steaming piles of goop. Without a backward glance, Gunther commanded his royal knights to form up. "Protect us as long as you can," he ordered, as they formed a protective ring around him and Harry. The knights bracing as more demons assaulted them from every direction, testing the might of the elite elven warriors. While the royal knights fought the demons, Gunther grabbed Harry's shoulders with both his hands and said to him in an anguished voice, "My son, you must find your grandfather." He then placed his palm on Harry's chest, releasing a pulse of barely visible energy. Upon feeling the strange energy pulse into his body, Harry gasped as he felt the wind being knocked out of him, and his eyes went foggy. Squinting at his father, Harry opened his mouth to speak, but before he could let a word out, the hand on his chest pushed him back, and he began to fall through a portal that Gunther had opened behind his back. The last words he heard from his father as he fell through the void was Gunther's heavy-hearted whisper, "Hecastra guide you." Harry fell through the portal, which snapped shut behind him, leaving the king to face the encroaching doom. The king then took a deep breath and let out a sigh, whispering a prayer only he could hear. "Hecastra, please let him find Orath safely." He then turned to the remaining knights and exclaimed in a booming voice, "Brothers, the ill-fated time has come, just as promised." The knights remained in their formation, but their expressions became extremely solemn. King Gunther continued as his voice rose, rallying the elves around him. "However, take solace in this. Prince Harry has escaped. He will find Orath, and together, they will avenge the deaths that we will suffer here today." Gunther paused for a moment, taking a deep breath before going on to shout with even more conviction, "So do not despair, do not let your faith falter, and let us banish these bastards back to the abyss from whence they came. For the High Elves, for Hecastra, for Qualth, charge!" With the call to charge, the royal knights roared out and charged into the horde of oncoming demons with their king, slaughtering the demons wantonly as they went. As the king and his men made their way through the city, they destroyed demons by the dozens. But it was hopeless. For every demon that fell, it seemed there were two more to take its place. The elves, not faltering, however, trudged on through the hordes of despicable fiends, continuing their desperate battle, even as their numbers began to dwindle. As they pierced through the swarm, they started to notice undead appearing among the ranks of the demons. As they continued to push on, the number of undead continued to rise, casting a dark shadow on the faces of the elves as they struck down their former brethren. Making their way into the market district, it was at this time that the elves heard a hoarse and grating voice that seemed to echo all around them. "I've finally found one of you. I will put an end to his abominable bloodline." Then they saw it, a towering figure that was disproportionately slender at the waist, covered in black demon armor, with a face covered with rotting flesh that seemed to be stretched towards the back of its head, its lipless mouth exposing pointed teeth and wielding a simple-looking but large obsidian rod. King Gunther, upon seeing the foul appearance of the demon, roared out with all the fury that had been welling up inside him since he first exited the palace, "Orcus!" That's the end of part 2 of chapter 2. If you're enjoying the story so far, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the Dragon Emperor for more of Qualth's epic story.